Before we dive in, don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow Insight Global for more in-depth analysis of the events shaping our world. We may be living through one of the most profound geopolitical transformations of our century. A shift that is not just regional but global in scale. For decades, the United States counted India as a counterweight to China, a democratic ally that could help Washington maintain influence across Asia. But today, that balance is collapsing before our very eyes. India, once described as the swing state of global politics, is moving decisively toward Beijing. This is not a minor adjustment. It is a tectonic realignment that could rewrite the global order. What started as a trade spat over Trump's tariffs has escalated into a full-blown foreign policy pivot. Tariffs that Washington thought would pressure New Delhi instead shattered trust, leaving India to reassess its role in the world. And in a matter of weeks, that reassessment translated into action: direct military cooperation agreements with China, the very rival the US hoped to contain by aligning with India. For perspective, India had never before in its modern history signed such defense deals with Beijing. This was unthinkable even a year ago. Yet, the contracts now cover everything from advanced fighter jets and missile defense systems to naval frigates and submarines. Reports from South China Morning Post and Kyodo News confirm this isn't a token gesture, it's a comprehensive partnership. The significance is staggering. Only months ago, India was deep in talks with Washington to expand defense ties, exploring joint exercises and technology transfers. Suddenly, that momentum has reversed, and New Delhi is aligning with its old rival. Why? Because, as Bloomberg highlights, cold strategic logic has overtaken the memory of past disputes. Just consider the context. India and China have fought wars, clashed over borders, and faced off in the Himalayas. Their armies remain heavily deployed along the line of actual control. But insiders in New Delhi, quoted by The Hindu, reveal the painful truth. India realized it was being used as a pawn in Washington's containment strategy rather than treated as an equal partner. And when America imposed tariffs in August, the blow wasn't merely economic, it was psychological. It sent a message that New Delhi's interests were secondary. That message changed everything. For Washington, the fallout is devastating. The Atlantic Council has already called this the most significant U.S. strategic loss since Germany distanced itself from American-led trade deals. Losing India doesn't just mean losing a partner. It means handing China access to a vast market, world-class engineers, and a million-strong military force. The U.S. Indo-Pacific strategy, designed to counter Beijing, is suddenly weakened at its core. And it doesn't stop there. Nikkei Asia reports that this new alignment isn't limited to arms sales. It extends into joint research and development in areas like hypersonic missile technology, electronic warfare, and cyber defense. At the same time, Chinese companies are preparing to expand into India's communications and satellite markets. This exchange of resources, knowledge, and infrastructure could alter the military balance of Asia within a decade. Inside the United States, alarm bells are ringing. Politico describes heated debates within the administration. Should Washington continue pressuring India or urgently try to repair relations? The Pentagon, meanwhile, openly voices concern. Former National Security Council advisors, cited by Reuters, warn that America could soon face two giants acting as one. That scenario, India and China operating in tandem, would represent the greatest strategic challenge to Washington since the Cold War. On the ground in Asia, the pivot is already visible. Indian state television broadcasts show high-profile visits to Beijing, framing them as a historic partnership. Chinese outlets like Global Times call India their new strategic partner, emphasizing common goals that overshadow past rivalries. The shift feels not temporary but permanent. The economic context makes this clearer. According to Business Standard, Indian exporters lost more than $12 billion in just 2 months after Trump's tariffs. Sectors like textiles, pharmaceuticals, and IT services, all crucial to India's economy, suffered major setbacks. Facing rising inflation and unemployment, New Delhi looked elsewhere for relief. China responded with a powerful offer: contracts for Indian pharmaceuticals in its enormous domestic market and over $50 billion in credit for infrastructure projects. Beijing positioned itself not only as an economic partner but also as a financier of India's future growth. The symbolism here is impossible to ignore. For the first time in decades, India is no longer being treated as a junior partner in someone else's strategy but as a nation of equal weight in the shaping of the global order. This recognition carries immense psychological power for New Delhi. For Indian leaders, who have long complained of being sidelined in international negotiations, this shift was decisive. It signaled that India could no longer be spoken down to, dictated to, or treated as a pawn on a larger chessboard. Instead, it was stepping into its own as an independent pole of power. Nationalists within India were quick to applaud this pivot. For them, China's approach, offering cooperation without endless conditions, lectures on democracy, or intrusive demands, was refreshing. Beijing's willingness to acknowledge India as a partner, not an appendage, resonated deeply with a public tired of being told that their country should play second fiddle to the US or to Europe. On Indian television talk shows, commentators framed the move as India finally being respected. Hashtags celebrating India's equal seat at the table trended across social media platforms. Of course, not everyone agreed. Opposition voices and liberal commentators pointed to the risks of relying too heavily on Beijing, a country with which India has fought wars and clashed repeatedly over its borders. They warned that in trading dependence on Washington for ties with China, New Delhi might simply be exchanging one set of constraints for another. But despite these objections, the broader public mood was clear. Indians have grown weary of being treated as the junior partner, the follower, the assistant in someone else's plan. They now welcome a path that recognizes India as a nation capable of shaping global outcomes in its own right. The reverberations of this shift stretch far beyond Asia. In Tokyo and Canberra, alarm is palpable. Analysts warn that the Quad Alliance, the US-India-Japan-Australia grouping, once hailed as the backbone of the Indo-Pacific security architecture, may not survive without India's active participation. If New Delhi drifts toward Beijing, the entire purpose of the Quad collapses, leaving Japan and Australia exposed in a region where China's influence is already overwhelming. In Seoul, policymakers quietly admit that an India-China axis could squeeze South Korea's export-driven economy from both sides, Beijing's power in East Asia and New Delhi's leverage in South Asia. Meanwhile, in Washington, the political stakes are reaching a fever pitch. Trump's critics describe this as nothing short of the strategic failure of the century. His carefully crafted image as a master negotiator, a leader who could extract concessions and bend nations to America's will, is crumbling just as election season approaches. For his opponents, the narrative is devastatingly simple. Under his watch, the US didn't just lose trade deals or diplomatic leverage, it lost India itself, the very partner that once symbolized America's presence in Asia. The Chinese media, in stark contrast, are jubilant. Outlets such as Global Times run triumphant headlines: "America has lost Asia." Beijing presents the India pivot not as a temporary adjustment, but as proof that the world is entering a new era, an era where nations are no longer forced to choose between submission to Washington or isolation from the global economy. Instead, they can find dignity and opportunity in partnership with China. The long-term consequences of this shift are extraordinary. If India and China consolidate their partnership, the impact will not be confined to regional politics. It will reverberate globally. Together, these two giants control populations of over 2.8 billion people, immense natural resources, and armies numbering in the millions. Their industrial capacity is vast, their scientific talent pools deep, and their appetite for influence unbounded. Imagine the possibilities. A joint Indo-Chinese defense research program advancing hypersonic missile technology, artificial intelligence in warfare, and next-generation cyber defense. Picture trade routes across the Indian Ocean dominated not by U.S. naval fleets but by a coordinated Indo-Chinese maritime presence. This is not just a military alignment. It is the foundation of a comprehensive partnership, one that could reshape digital infrastructure, energy corridors, and even space exploration. What we are witnessing is not a passing diplomatic spat, nor a short-term crisis. It is a defining turning point in world history. The United States is losing India. China is gaining not just a partner, but a partner of equal standing, an indispensable ally in reshaping the global order. If you found this extended deep dive valuable, don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow Insight Global for more insights into the forces shaping tomorrow's world.